Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bump in the night. On tonight's episode, a man and his wife starts to try for a family when they are gifted a strange sunflower. So what's a memorable gift you've received? Because we received the sad sunflower.
A few months ago, my wife Julie and I decided to start trying for a family. We moved out of the big city to a small, midwestern Minnesota town, not too far from Grove City. It was time for a change. Hell, we even decided to stop smoking. We found a cheap, recently renovated flat. The entire complex was built in the 50s, but the apartments themselves had been fixed up just recently. We were told by the landlord, an absolutely stunning young woman, that most of the previous tenants decided to move out rather than wait for renovations to finish up. The place was basically brand new. Our apartment was on the ground floor. We didn't want to think about baby-proofing a balcony on the third or fourth floor, and we figured this would only be a stepping stone to getting our own house. Anyway, Julie had left her job as a high school teacher behind, while I'd gotten a job as manager at a local warehouse. I'd already worked as a manager previously for the same company, so it was just a matter of finding a suitable transfer. The previous tenants had left us a gift. Sitting alone in the kitchen window was a blue sunflower. At first I thought it was plastic, but it was perfectly real. The color was striking. It was still yellow in the middle, with black spots. But the leaves were a sparkling ocean blue. The flower pot was hand-painted with a small landscape and a shining sun. In plain black text it said, "The sad sunflower." "That is just too cute," smiled Julie. "We've got to keep it." I've never been able to say no to her. That big smile of hers could make me do anything. If she wanted to keep the sad sunflower, so be it. I watered it and turned it facing outwards. Oddly enough, it had been leaning inwards towards the apartment. I thought sunflowers were supposed to follow the sun. Julie just loved it. She already had a good feeling about this place. I wasn't convinced yet, but I figured it was just nicotine withdrawal. Over the following days, I was getting adjusted to my job. I brought in a cake to get to know everyone. Their previous manager had personal issues and suddenly left town, so there was urgent need for someone to step in. It was just great timing for me. Julie was still looking for a new job. There were a few schools nearby that she was going to look up, but we needed a second car first. Money was tight after the move, so we decided to wait a few weeks before making any big purchases. So Julie spent most of her days at home. She'd been clear about wanting to be a stay-at-home mom once we had a family of our own. So maybe she was just trying to get used to the idea. Call it a practice run. She would do a lot of housework and handle the groceries. I usually cooked dinner, but she would handle the dishes. One day after coming home from work, I noticed her humming a strange tune while watering the sad sunflower. I'd never heard it before. "You're my friend, I'll sing your tune, a setting sun to rising moon. I ask you, buddy, buddy blue, won't you be a sunflower too?" I took off my shoes and joined her in the kitchen. She'd hum the tune over and over, checking every leaf on that sparkling blue plant. It was leaning inwards again, away from the sun. Almost like a dog asking for a head scratch. "What's that song?" I asked. "What song?" I asked her several times over. She honestly didn't know what I was talking about. I read it out loud and she just blanked. The same way I could have sworn I heard her sing it, she swore she hadn't. I turned the plant back outwards, towards the sun. The next day it was leaning back in. That tune started to haunt me. I could hear Julie sing it in the shower, while doing the dishes, while tying her shoes. Over time, she came to accept that she was singing it, but she wasn't doing it consciously. It was like a brain teaser. "I must have heard it somewhere," she said. Some kind of nursery rhyme. I couldn't blame her for having her mind occupied with kids' stuff. It was pretty much all we talked about. We just started trying for a baby, and it would just be a matter of time before our lives would change forever. It was stressful, but exciting. More of an adventure than any bungee jumping could ever replicate. Julie got a part-time teaching job at the local high school. One of their teachers were going on maternity leave, so they needed someone to step in and help out with social studies. We didn't have a second car, but one of the guys I worked with lived just down the street. So we started to carpool. I thought having some independence and getting out of the apartment would do Julie some good. It did at first. She had so much energy when she got home after a long day. Still, she would beeline towards her sad sunflower, take care of it, water it, and only then would she concentrate on anything else. She didn't even take her shoes off. That plant was by far her most favorite thing in the world. Honestly, I didn't get it. She still hummed that melody. "You're my friend, I'll sing your tune, a setting sun to rising moon." I once got back home early, only to notice that the sunflower was gone. Julie wasn't home from work, and the thing was just gone. Later, when Julie came home, it all made sense. She held that thing under her arm as she walked through the door. It was almost like someone holding a baby. She had a grocery bag swinging underneath. I'll be the first to admit I didn't handle it very well. "You're bringing it to work?" I accused. "What is going on with you?" "It's nothing," Julie sighed. It's like having a safety blanket. It doesn't mean anything." "Then throw it away." She stared at me in disbelief. I took a step forward to help her with her groceries, and she recoiled. Her eyes were dilated, and it looked like she was on the edge of a fight or flight reaction. I just stopped. "What the hell?" "Don't you dare," she spat. "Don't you dare." After that, Julie slept on the couch for a couple of nights. It was her idea, not mine. She would give me these long, accusing looks from across the room whenever I was in line of sight of that damn plant. It was still facing inwards. I'm sure the damn thing was moving or turning back every time I tried to face it outwards. I started hearing things at night. I once peeked out of the bedroom to see Julie water and prune that plant in the middle of the night. She'd sing to it over and over, the same rhyme. In the moonlight, it looked like she didn't even blink. 2:30 in the morning, and there she was caressing the leaves. There were other things as well. Foul-smelling dirt in the wastebasket. Dark blue sunflower seeds scattered around the bathroom. I didn't know what to make of it, but Julie and I weren't really talking anymore. She had no problem talking to that plant, though. "I ask you, Buddy Blue, won't you be a sunflower too?" It all came to a boiling point the day when Julie didn't come home from work. Of course, she'd taken the plant with her. I tried her phone, but she didn't pick up. At 7 in the evening, I was getting seriously worried. I called the school where she worked, but of course it was closed. Instead, I called her coworker, Miss Marriott. "This is Claire," she answered. "Hey, I'm calling about Julie. This is her husband," I said. "Sorry about calling you like this." "No, it's fine. Is everything all right?" "When Julie came to work, did she seem okay? Did she do anything unusual?" "I'm not following." "Well, like, did she bring..." "No, I'm sorry, I meant..." "What do you mean with came to work?" Apparently, Julie had quit her temp job about a week ago. I rushed down the street to my coworker and asked to borrow their car. They didn't mind, and even asked if there was anything they could do to help. I didn't even know where to start, so I just thanked them and left. I drove around town for hours, checking every open store, every alley, every side road. Finally, I stopped for gas. As I went inside to pay and get a soda, I noticed the clerk humming a tune. She was reading a magazine and humming away, barely noticing I was even there. I'd recognize that melody anywhere. "Where'd you hear that?" I asked. She just looked up at me like she'd woken up from a nap. She had no idea what I was talking about. I just paid and left, figuring Julie had been there. She was close. There was a small dirt road not too far from the gas station, leading down to a fishing lake. All you could catch there was smallmouth bass, but it was a great little place to have a barbecue. I drove down the road, following a hunch. It paid off. Just a few minutes later, I saw our car on the side of the road. The door was still open. Lights were blinking. It was swarming with mosquitoes. I parked alongside it and brought out a flashlight. There was a small trail through the woods, leading up to a clearing next to the lake. It was the only place she could have gone, unless she was just mindlessly going random directions. I didn't have to go far to hear her. There was no wind, so even a slight noise could be heard from far away. "I ask you, Buddy Blue..." The same damn rhyme. Next to the trail, I noticed small, bright stalks reaching out of the soil. They looked freshly planted. I could guess what kind of plant they were, even though they hadn't bloomed yet. "Won't you be a sunflower too?" I stepped into the clearing. I could barely see them all with that tiny cone of light. There were hundreds of them, spread out in a circle. In the middle was Julie, reciting her rhyme over and over. She'd taken off her clothes, and I could see mosquitoes swarming her. It didn't seem to bother her. The melody in her song was gone, turned to a mantra. She was standing with her back towards me, holding her hands in front of her like a cup. She suddenly made a harsh coughing sound and bent forward. I took a few steps and stopped. Every single sunflower turned towards me, blue leaves vibrating like rattlesnakes. Julie turned around. Sunflower seeds were dripping from her mouth. In her cupped hands, she held the same kind of foul-smelling tar dirt that I'd found in the wastebasket. Her eyes were bright blue. Her teeth were stained black. "You're my friend, I'll sing your tune." Sunflower seeds kept falling from the edge of her mouth. She kept coughing, almost choking. She was constantly on the edge of inhaling the seeds into her lungs. Her singing voice was broken and struggling. Still, she smiled. The same smile that could get me to do anything. A setting sun to rising moon. The flowers turned back towards her, vibrating. Tiny leaves clapping in appreciation. I didn't know what to do. I was horrified. I was angry. I was desperate. I froze. Julie walked up to me, holding a large seed between her lips. She took my hands and leaned forward to kiss me. I've never smelled anything so putrid in my life. I think that's what snapped me out of it. It was the only time I've refused a kiss from her. I'm not proud of what happened next, but I didn't have a choice. I grabbed Julie and threw her over my shoulder. She protested wildly, scratching and beating me. She had to stop over and over to throw up more seeds and dirt. I just ignored the wounds on my neck and scalp and kept carrying her. I'd locked her in the back seat of the car and turned on the child locks. As I shut the doors, she was hysterical, screaming and flailing in the back seat like a possessed toddler. I got a jerrycan from my car. It was half full. That was enough. I stopped smoking the day we moved into our new apartment, but I still had my lighter. When I stepped back out into that clearing, I could hear something moving. I ignored it. I dumped every drop of gasoline that I had and just set the whole field on fire. I left the lighter behind. As I stepped away, I could hear things popping in the grass. Blue leaves crinkling to ash, and somewhere there were tiny screams. Tiny, bright screams. Something was burned alive in that field, and I don't want to think about what it might have been. It sounded human. Wrong, but human. Julie recovered in a couple of days. The doctors figured she'd been eating seeds from the sunflower and that it had contained some kind of poison. The doctor couldn't find anything abnormal about her blood levels, and after a couple of days of rest, she was back to her old self again. Her eyes were back to their ordinary brown, and her smile was as genuine as ever. She was so sorry for all the trouble she caused, and she had a hard time remembering what had happened. To her, it was all a bad dream. We've since gotten pregnant. Over the months, we've baby-proofed the apartment, but we're already looking to move to a house. Julie got back to her job as a temp, and she might be looking at an extension at the end of the school year. She's quite popular. We're thinking about the name Danny with a Y for a boy, or Danny with an I for a girl. We're not sure yet. There's only one thing that still worries me. The ultrasounds. Julie have been taking them while I'm at work, but she's shown me every single image. They look perfectly fine, but on the last one, there was something that didn't add up. In the corner of the picture, the date was set to 5 years ago. I'm suspecting she's not showing me the actual ultrasounds, or that she hasn't taken them. I don't know what she could be hiding, and sometimes, at night, I hear her humming. The same damn tune. You're my friend, I'll sing your tune. A setting sun to rising moon. I ask you, Buddy Blue, won't you be a sunflower too?
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man looking to relocate for his job finds himself in a scary situation after a bus ride accident. So, what would you do to survive? Because Noah ate someone.
A few years ago, I was moving from Cleveland to Minneapolis. It had been the worst year of my life. The man I'd been dating for the past 3 years had been involved in a scam and squandered most of our joint savings along the way. Shortly after, I lost my job. I just couldn't keep up with the pressure of finding a new place and surviving on breadcrumbs, and I just broke down. So I decided to start over in Minneapolis. I had a couple of friends who offered me a couch to crash on for a couple of weeks. I was looking to get a new job and start over fresh. I got on a Greyhound with nothing but 2 suitcases and a handful of unread DMS. It was a long trip. Most people stepped off in Chicago and Milwaukee. So for the final stretch of the trip, there was only 2 people left. Me and a passenger sitting right across from me. A man in his early 60s. He had a kind face and spent most of his time sending messages to his friends and family. I got the impression that this was some kind of event for him. He had a fanny pack with snacks, an extra battery for his phone, sunscreen on the tip of his ears, and a pair of Ray-Bans resting on his trucker cap. I talked to him a little. His name was Noah. He was heading home after a long consultation job out of state. He was some kind of environmental lawyer. He was all about public transportation and reducing the carbon footprint. I could tell he was a jubilant fellow. I don't know a lot of people who speak so highly of their job. About half an hour from our destination, the bus suddenly lurched. There was someone standing in the middle of the road, and the driver had done his best to steer out of the way. I saw a brief silhouette of someone small go by the window, possibly a child. Moments later, we were thrown into a ditch, and the bus tipped over. In the blink of an eye, all turned to chaos. I was thrown out of my seat like a slack-necked doll, and there was this awful metal groaning noise. The side of the bus was torn open. Suddenly, the world was still. My mind was spinning. I barely made it off the bus before I hurled, my inner ear screaming at me to lie down. Everything felt different. The air tasted metal. We'd driven straight into a field, leaving a long trail of bent grass and wild blue sunflowers behind us. As the engines of the bus died, all that was left was the flapping of moth wings. Looking back at the road, there was no one there. I couldn't see Noah or the bus driver. I picked up my phone and called the police without a second thought. I felt disoriented, and the strangest details stood out to me. Like, how often do you stop to look at the shape of your phone, or stop to think about the actual code you use to unlock it? While still on the phone, I was asked by the operator to check if everyone was okay. I moved to the front of saw the driver's seat empty, and rounded the corner. "Can you see them?" the operator asked again. "Is everyone all right?" I heard the noise before I saw them. This thick, meaty squish, the tearing, clicking teeth. The kindly-looking Noah was sitting a bit further out in the field, with a streak of blood trailing him. He was cradling the driver in his arms, slowly biting off pieces from the side of his head. Hair and all slurped up like spaghetti. It looked almost serene, like a grazing antelope. "Excuse me, miss," the operator repeated. "Can you see them?" "Yes," I whispered breathlessly. "Yes, I do." "Is everyone all right?" Noah looked up at me with complete disinterest. For a moment, his eyes met mine, and he was as calm as ever. There was no panic, no regret, nothing. Like a dog enjoying a meaty bone. "No," I wheezed back into the phone. "No, we're not all right." Yes, he'd killed and eaten that man. The moment we got off the bus, the first thing he'd done was to kill and eat him. No hesitation whatsoever. For a good 15 minutes, I just stood there, watching. The police were on their way, but this was a bit out of their way. Noah didn't seem to mind an audience. He just bit, chew, and swallowed. Bit, chew, and swallow. Thin spurts of blood stained his horn-rimmed glasses. But I couldn't move or look away. I couldn't bring myself to move or turn my back on him. I was just frozen. The moment the police arrived, they didn't even pull out their guns. They just stood there, staring in disbelief. Putting Noah in handcuffs and taking him away was completely uneventful. There was no struggle, no sudden attacks, nothing. Noah just looked disappointed to have his meal taken away, like a child tiredly reaching for his teddy bear. I was so distraught after stating my witness account that I forgot one of my bags. I just took the one closest to me and got out of there. I I couldn't bring myself to call on my friends. I crashed at the first motel I came across. I sat up all night staring into the ceiling, still trying to make some kind of sense about what I'd seen. I didn't notice myself crying, and I didn't notice how those cries slowly turned to screams. I just lay there, head empty, screaming into a cheap, tear-stained motel pillow. Over the following weeks, I settled into a new place, a new job, and a new life. Everything was different, but in ways I hadn't anticipated. I felt like an alien, as if the world had shifted, like I'd seen something not of this earth. Some of the most mundane things felt strange. Eating a sesame seed bagel at the cafe down on the corner felt like ashes in my mouth. All I could think about was teeth, tearing, ripping, curious eyes looking my way. But looking past all that, there was something else that kept crawling back into my mind. Just how awful I was at judging someone's character. How I hadn't noticed the scam my ex had been wrapped up in, costing us our savings. How I hadn't noticed how I was neglecting my work to the point where they had to let me go, and now this. How I couldn't see that the friendly Noah on the bus had been ready to eat a living person at the drop of a hat. It didn't add up to me. How do you miss something like that? I was one of the witnesses called in the trial that followed. I hoped it'd be a chance to finally put it all behind me. I said my piece, and I stayed to watch the proceedings. I had to know more about this man and what turned him into this monster. He didn't look like a monster, though. He was just a man in a suit. He even had the same glasses. I couldn't look past his friendly demeanor, still as unbothered by this whole situation as the day I saw him bite down on raw flesh. There was a clinical psychologist called to the stand. He'd been there to assess Noah's mental state and was ready to share his findings. Mr. Ayton is deeply confused, he said. To him, this behavior is not something new. This is something he's been forced to do for years in order to survive. Is he confessing further crimes? Yes, the psychologist continued. But Mr. Ayton has lost perception of reality. He speaks of living in a forest, hunting people for food. He has no memory of ever having a family or an occupation. To him, his life has been about inhuman acts brought by never-ending strife. And you assess that this belief is a genuine response to trauma? Yes, his belief is genuine, the psychologist agreed. This man has suffered a great trauma. There was a short pause as the psychologist checked his notes and adjusted his glasses. It's as if he believes he comes from a different world. In Noah's mind, he'd been a murderer for years, trapped in a sort of limbo state. His description of the world was horrifying, living in a space of ruptured reality where the only certainty was famine and pain. He'd taken refuge in what he believed to be the shell of an abandoned bus. Suddenly, there were intruders in his space, one of which he killed and ate. The other he didn't mind, since he was already having his fill. According to his testimony, he was even willing to share. He wanted to be a good host. His family spoke of another story. To them, Noah was a kind man with a busy schedule. There were pictures of him coaching his son's basketball team. He'd recently celebrated 30 years of marriage to his wife, which he loved dearly. To them, this was an unreal nightmare. There was nothing in his history pointing to this kind of madness. Something happened, they said. Something must have happened on that bus. I hate to admit it, but I agreed. It just didn't make sense. I'm not sure what happened to Noah. There was a lot of talk behind closed doors, and most of what was said stayed there. The papers didn't say a lot about it. There was mention of a case of mutilation, but every report about it was vague. It's as if no one really wanted to report it. Maybe they didn't know if it was a case of mental illness or something more sinister. Either way, there wasn't much said about him. I tried to put it out of my head. I caught up with my unread DMS. I'd been dreading reading worried texts, demands about unpaid bills, and whatever else might kick me further while I was down. I couldn't go back to that world just yet, but I sort of had to. But that's where things took another turn. I didn't recognize these messages. Unknown names and numbers, asking me to call them back. One begged me to reconsider. Another sent me an address and a name. All kinds of strange, even coded messages. Also, bank accounts, payments. That made me pause. I had no idea who these people were or what they wanted from me. Had they gotten the wrong number? I remember my second bag. I'd only brought the one, which I'd stashed away in my bathroom. I hadn't opened it since that night. And the second bag, well, I still hadn't talked to the police about it. But I decided that before I did anything else, I ought to at least unpack what little I'd brought, even though it might be stained with blood or worse. I couldn't bear the thought of it. But opening the bag, well, there was nothing of the sort in it. It was my bag. I was certain of it. But there were no clothes or keepsakes. Instead, it had syringes wrapped in leather casings, little clear vials, unmarked, sheets of plastic, bags, duct tape, and knives. Several knives of various sizes, all sharpened to perfection. I picked one up, it fit perfectly into my hand as if made for me. Looking up at the bathroom mirror, there was something about the image looking back at me that I couldn't recognize. While I could feel a frown forming on my brow, the face looking at me had a creeping smirk, and I saw it blink. That was only the beginning. The police didn't have my second bag. There had never been a second bag. There was only that one bag, and I couldn't recognize a thing in it. Even stranger, I couldn't get in touch with anyone I knew. All numbers seemed to be out of commission. My parents, my sister, my friends, none of them. I couldn't call them or find their social media profiles. In my bag, there was a wallet, several fake IDs, and thousands of dollars in cash. I couldn't recognize the president on the bill. With every revelation, the smirk on my mirror image deepened. It would tilt its head the other way. It would look up and down, observing me. I'd raise my hand towards it, and it wouldn't return the gesture. Once, when I was in the bathroom, the bulb went out. I was standing there, fresh out of the shower, in complete darkness. I wrapped my cold towel around me, and I heard something. It sounded like a distant echo of my own voice, as if spoken from the other side of a window. Closer, it whispered. I didn't say anything. I just held my breath and listened. I'm lost, it continued. Coming home. A finger brushed against my hair. I recoiled, and so did something else. I heard footsteps, moving away. As I opened the bathroom door and let some light in, the mirror image was nothing out of the ordinary. But somewhere out there in the dark, I heard waning footsteps. With every message I received, it was becoming increasingly clear that people were expecting something of me. That I'd move somewhere, meet someone, do something. I was asked about my equipment, about places and times. There were also a handful of threats from people expressing disappointment. There was a knock on the door once. Another time, I saw a car slowing down to watch me through the kitchen window. There were mysterious phone calls at night, and whenever I stepped into a dark room, I'd stay clear of mirrors. If I stepped too close, I could hear something moving in there. Footsteps, irregular breaths. Sometimes I'd feel the warmth of something reaching for me. Skin, just inches away. Then, a hasty retreat. I decided to retrace my steps. After all, Noah Ayton had been a family man before we swerved off that road. But what the hell had I been? Maybe he wasn't the only one who'd changed. I rented a car and took to the highway. I was having trouble navigating, ending up down a couple of roads I wasn't supposed to. When I finally began to recognize where I was meant to go, the sun was already setting. I didn't care. I was ready to drive through the night if need be. The first rain spatter came as soon as the sun set. The wind was picking up. I didn't dare to look in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to think about what I might see. I don't know how long I drove. After a while, I stopped seeing other cars on the road. Then, a shadow. Someone in the middle of the road. A boy? I stepped on the brakes. A couple of moths thumped against my windshield as my car came to a full stop. I caught a glance at a side view mirror, only to see a hand reaching out. I blinked it away. I got out of the car, looking back down the road. I could still see the silhouette of a boy, walking away, just like that night when the bus swerved off the road. This had to be connected. Just had to. I left my car running by the side of the road. "Wait," I called out. "Hold on." He didn't stop. I was catching up, but as it turns out, I wasn't the only one. As I got closer, other figures emerged from the rain. Some of them looked like me. Others only held a vague resemblance. A select few were identical. Further out, there were other figures. some impossibly tall, others barely even human. We all looked at one another, our heads turning in unison. Left, right, left. Like a ripple of thought forcing us all to do the same. A collective impulse. "I want my knives back." A voice breaking through the rain. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. I'd seen her in the mirror dozens of times by now, but this time her voice was unhindered. There was no mirror in the way. I could feel her staring at me. We were all spread out in a circle around the mysterious voice, a sort of beacon we'd all gathered around. And the closer we got, the stranger things became. I lost track of time. I could barely feel the weight of my heartbeats as they quickened and slowed, seemingly at random. The wind picked up, then disappeared, then reappeared. Rain to snow to hail to summer sun. In one blink of an eye, the world was on fire. In another, we were standing in oncoming traffic, cars throwing themselves off the road to avoid us. In one place, the stars were gone and the ground was nothing but black sand. In so many places, there was nothing left. No life, no sky, nothing. It was terrifying. I wanted to turn around to run, but I couldn't trust the figure to my side not to take advantage. Instead, I stopped. A few moved closer, only to dissipate or be changed forever. One sprouted a third arm. Another was dragged into the dark by an unseen force. One fell to the ground, stretched and bent like hot metal. Screams, cries, and hysterical laughter. Slowly, the boy moved away. With every step he took, I could feel my world slowing down. By the time I could feel the rain on my skin again, there was a hand on my shoulder. I was grabbed, spun around, and pushed. In front of me, my twisted mirror image. "Go home," it hissed. "I'm done with this place." A push. Shadows growing distant and the rain growing stronger. A different rain. There was an unknown car waiting by the side of the road. One more neatly parked. Similar to the one I'd used, but not the same. Going through the glove box, I recognized several items. Looking in the back seat, there were two familiar bags. I realized what had happened. I'd been gone, and now I'd returned. I have been back here for quite some time now. Here, where Noah Ayton is an ordinary family man without any articles mentioning his name. I settled into my new place and eventually got a new job. Got back in touch with my family and friends. I started to recognize the faces on my dollar bills again. But a few things have happened. No one has seen my ex for a while. There was a string of disappearances around the area where I used to live back in Cleveland. I don't like to think about what has happened there. Am I responsible? If not, who is? I'm not sure what happened that night. Not really. I think we got too close to something we shouldn't. And what little sense we make of this world got mixed up. I can't help but to look a little longer at mirrors. I lean my ear in to listen, making sure I don't hear anything. I turn my head back and forth, making sure the image follows. So far, it does. But I sometimes get the sense that it doesn't. Maybe in the dark, when I can't look as closely. If you find yourself near a strange sunflower field, keep your eyes on the road. Slow down. And if you do get a little too close, watch your surroundings, check your bills, and in more ways.